Now, if the woke left has their way, we could be looking at a future where we just simply don't arrest people of color after they've committed a crime. I have 2 videos to back that up. Let's talk about it. Guys, before we get into these 2 very interesting videos, please like and subscribe. I want as many people to find this channel as possible so you know what to do. Now, video 1 is from last year of 2022, and it's a white man who has called the police after a black man has confronted him and threatened him with a knife.
Let me see what you have. A knife! No!
This white man calls the police on him in order to stop the altercation. The police come and arrest the man, and this is the moment that we get in Bodycam footage.
He was arrested and charged with simple assault and terroristic threats. Following his arrest, he was transported to the DeKalb County Jail.
Let's go to the SWAT car, please. Okay. That way.
Why is it happening? I'm being arrested?
Yes.
For what?
For what?
I'll be with you in just 1 second.
Are you arrested? I just wanted to fix the wrong.
Now, if you didn't hear that, the victim in this case, who was threatened with the knife, where the guy said, "Die," while holding a knife to him, said, "Are you arresting him? I just wanted you to, have him leave us alone." Okay?
But still, I will need for you to fill out a statement for him.
I don't want him arrested. I just want him to leave us alone.
No, but he had a weapon on him, and it was terrorist threats.
Brandishing is not a crime with a knife. Brandishing is only a crime for a gun.
Terroristic threats, though, sorry.
Because he said "die" to me and had his knife out?
That is, in fact, a crime. I get where this guy's coming from, and we're gonna break down this video a little bit more as it gets more emotional. But yes, if you go and pull out a knife and start threatening somebody, saying "die" to them, and then they call the police on you, you better believe you're probably gonna get arrested. And we would hope that would be the case. Let me know if you'd want another result.
All that was done. The threats, everything. Let me get a statement.
If I thought you were gonna arrest him, I wouldn't call. I just wanted to leave us alone.
I understand, but we still have a job to do.
Now he's gonna think I'm doing this because I'm white and he's black, or he's homeless and I'm not. I don't want that.
But did he do what he did?
Yeah, but I don't want him thinking I did it because he's in whatever situation he's in. I just want him to leave us alone.
I doubt that.
So, of course, this video has been circulating on the internet as it has resurfaced, and a lot of people have been coming after this guy. They're, of course, making fun of him because he's crying.
You can't just sit here and cry.
Oh, I can't just sit here and cry!
But let's, in fact, break down the situation, and there's some very important words that he expressed. I can understand somebody like this, who we can imagine is probably a leftist, coming at this from the perspective of, this is a homeless man, he's in a bad situation in life, he probably wasn't dealt the best cards, and that's what put him in the situation with me where he threatened me with the knife. He might not blame that guy for his own actions.
It's not your fault.
Now thinks that if this altercation happens in his life, that man shouldn't be arrested because he doesn't have the same amount of privilege that the white guy has. That's what's insinuated in this video.
He is a good guy, not a terrorist.
But a very important phrase that he uses is, "I don't want this man to think." That's what he says. I don't want him to think I'm doing it because I'm white and he's black. I don't want him to think that I'm doing this because I'm me and he is a homeless man, right? So it's all about perception. He doesn't want the perception of having been a white person who called the police on a black person and got him arrested. Why would somebody not want that perception? Is it maybe because we've spun an entire narrative of white supremacy in this country where white people have this inherent privilege, they are the oppressors, and black people, simply by virtue of being born, are oppressed? Even though in this case, the black guy was the oppressor. He's the one threatening the white man. He's the one holding the knife.
Colonel Mustard in the library with a wrench.
But he is so scared of being perceived as racist or being perceived from a position of privilege that he doesn't even want somebody who was threatening his life to be arrested. Do I sympathize with this guy and understand where he's coming from? I get where he's coming from. But does that mean we are supposed to let those deeper feelings that we feel completely cloud a situation where this guy is probably a harm to himself, probably a harm to others, and could go down the street to go and threaten another individual? Should we let that cloud our judgment in that situation? Absolutely not. of course he should be arrested. But we're going to get into this idea of restorative justice that has been circulating among leftists for quite some time, and I feel is coming to a head in our modern society, and we'll break down what that means after we get into this next story. So that's story number one. Comment down below how you feel about that guy's reaction. I'm sure a lot of you will have much to say about that. Story number two revolves around an even more heinous crime and the victim's friend's reaction to this crime. Here's the headline out of ABC 7 News. Friends of murdered Oakland baker call for alternatives to prison for alleged teen killer. So this is an incident that happened with a 19-year-old man who has now been charged with the death of an Oakland baker who was dragged by a car during a robbery attempt in February of this year, according to police. Authorities say that Ishmael Birch, that is the perpetrator in this case, was driving the getaway car when another person grabbed Jen Angel, the victim in this case, grabbed the purse in downtown Oakland. Angel was dragged 50 feet and died 2 days later due to this crime. It gets worse than this, right? They've already killed somebody due to this robbery, and it says the police say that Birch, the perpetrator, was involved in a second robbery that same day. They're robbing people left and right. They ended up killing this baker, and her friends have now taken to the news, not necessarily to defend the killer in this case, but to say that maybe he should not see the inside of a prison.
Ira Burse was Angel's friend. She's one of several people calling on local authorities to pursue an alternative to traditional prosecution.
I know Jen believed that we need to address harm and create accountability that is really rooted in looking at the root causes of why harm happens.
Burse says Angel strongly disagreed with the current criminal justice system and would not want her alleged killer to go to prison.
Like locking somebody in a cage, is that really going to bring Jen back?
Instead, Burse says Angel would have liked a form of restorative justice to happen. Friends of Angels have been working alongside the nonprofit Restore Oakland.
And restorative justice is really about healing, and healing begins with telling the truth. And our current criminal justice system robs any opportunity of truth-telling from all parties.
So our current criminal justice system stops people from being able to tell the truth. The truth in this case is that a 19-year-old man is responsible for the death of this Oakland baker. Now, she might have been all for restorative justice, and I think that is something that should be mentioned. It should be something that is talked about. But in a heinous action like this, committing multiple crimes in one day, and a crime in particular that leads to the death of another person, you are taken off the streets because they don't want other people to be harmed. That's what's happening in our criminal justice system. Now, the friend of this baker, Jen Angel, says, what would that do? Why does it matter? Why would we put him in prison? It's not going to bring Jen back. And while that statement is completely true, that is not the function of placing somebody in prison. That is not the function of our criminal justice system. It is not to necessarily restore or repair damage that was done. It is, in fact, to, of course, bring about justice, which we'll talk about, but also to stop people from committing crimes again, right? You're in prison, you've killed somebody. We don't want that happening to another person. Your patterns so far as a citizen in this country show that you are likely to go out and commit other crimes. We're going to put you away for a little while. Now, let's talk about restorative justice, because I imagine both the people in these situations who we've seen talk today are fans of restorative justice. It says restorative justice is an approach to justice that aims to get offenders to take responsibility for their actions, to understand the harm that they've caused, to give them an opportunity to redeem themselves, and to discourage them from causing further harm. For victims, its goal is to give an active role in the process and to reduce feelings of anxiety and powerlessness. Restorative justice is founded on an alternative theory to the traditional methods of justice, which often focus on retribution. There is a facet of retribution that is involved in our criminal justice system. But I think more so than that, we are keeping dangerous people off the streets. And that's what's intended to happen when somebody like Ishmael Birch, this 19-year-old guy, goes to prison. Now, it says one response to a crime in a restorative justice program is to organize a meeting between the victim and the offender. In this case, that would not be able to be done. So I imagine they would bring together community members, friends of this deceased baker to talk to the perpetrator. It says the goal is for them them to share their experience of what happened and to discuss who was harmed by the crime and how, and to create a consensus for what the offender can do to repair the harm from the offense. This may include a payment of money given from the offender to the victim,
Pay me my money.
apologies, and other amends,
And I'm sorry if I hurt anybody, et cetera, yada, yada, yada. Everything I'm supposed to say.
and other actions to compensate those affected and to prevent the offender from causing future harm. Now, this all sounds wonderful and beautiful and utopian, right? That somebody commits a crime against another person and then we just put them together in a cushy room and let them talk about how the crime affected them and how their feelings are hurt by what they did. And then we decide amongst ourselves what the offender should do or should not do. That all sounds beautiful, right? But in reality, what happens when that's the case for somebody like Ishmael Birch, who is responsible for the death of another human being? They go back out on the street, they find another person to rob, and then that person ends up dead. And then we have this repeated cycle of criminality that continues to harm our communities. Do I think there's something to be said about prison reform and putting a little bit more emphasis on rehabilitation rather than punishment? Absolutely, I think there's something to be said. There's a discussion that needs to be had there. But to think that somebody who's responsible for the murder of another person, or a man who goes and brandishes a knife at somebody and tells them to die, to think that those people shouldn't see the inside of a jail blows my mind. And I can't see how that would work or be successful in our society. And I think there's a reason that the woke left in particular is so gung-ho about this, because it surrounds this broader conversation of racial justice. You'll find that when we're having conversations about restorative justice, white people are not often the center of that conversation. It's people of color. Can we also maybe mention that the rates of criminality within certain groups are far higher than others, and maybe that's the reason we're having questions around restorative justice? You'll hear this beautiful phrase, restorative justice, right? And it sounds beautiful and wonderful, but in translation, what it often means is that people are not being properly punished for the crimes that they commit. We're pushing zero bail policies in progressive cities that turn offenders into career criminals. We're decriminalizing certain actions that any sane or rational society would say that somebody needs to be punished for. And instead of restoring people's lives, instead of actually leading to rehabilitation, we're creating crime surges that affect the law-abiding citizens in our communities. With that being said, I'll give their argument a little bit of time here and say that, you know what, I think there could be restorative justice measures set in place for lesser crimes. Maybe people who are caught with things like marijuana in states where it's illegal, or nonviolent crimes. Maybe there's space to have a conversation there. But when you have people brandishing knives or doing something even worse, killing a fellow community member, I'm so sorry. I'm not for putting the parties and rooms together to decide what the punishment is. At that point, you are not just a perpetrator in relation to the victim of the crime. You can come to affect the entire community. And that's why our justice system is set in place the way it is. That's why laws should be applied to all people and to all people equally and evenly. And we can have discussions as to whether or not our criminal justice system is actually meeting that promise and meeting that purpose. But I don't think those discussions surround things like restorative justice, because in every place that I've seen it applied, it's not helping our communities be safer. It's not keeping bad people off the streets. But I want to hear from you guys. Obviously, this conversation takes a lot of nuance. As I said before, there are places where I think a restorative justice conversation could be used, in certain instances where I think we can apply these rules. But not in these two situations. Let me know how you feel about it. Do you sympathize with the individuals in these videos? The man who cried because he got another person arrested? The friends of Jen Angel who say, I don't want to see this man go to prison? Or do you disagree with them? And if so, why? As always, we encourage healthy debate in the comments, so duke it out, but do so respectfully. And as always, like, subscribe, click the notification bell to be notified every single time I post a video for you guys, which is every day, and I'll see you next time.